Now, I'll admit, to my everlasting shame, I have never seen the Beverly Hills Cop trilogy. And since Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is coming out on Netflix later this week, I thought I'd go ahead and sit down and watch all three Beverly Hills Cops movies for the first time, so let's review. Now, the first film is about Axel Foley, played by Eddie Murphy, in which his best friend gets killed, and so he goes from Detroit to Beverly Hills to find out why somebody wants his best friend killed, while also meeting some new partners within the police force and figuring out the investigation and hijinks ensue and some iconic moments, and yeah. Now, I'll admit, because I'm now watching these movies for the first time, I think maybe I would have appreciated these movies a lot more had I seen them earlier within my life. Because right now, I enjoyed them. Well, at least I enjoyed the first two movies more than the third film in a bit. But I got a kick out of watching these movies, but I'm just not loving these movies the way most people do. And that's not a fault of anybody else. If you love these movies, awesome. I'm glad that you like these movies. Just because I've never seen these movies, they're just not hitting me, especially at this point in my adult life. That being said, I still enjoyed these movies. This is for sure one of Eddie Murphy's most iconic movies, and he definitely made this first movie. It is definitely successful for a lot of reasons. This was Eddie Murphy's flagship franchise at the time, and especially at a time when Eddie Murphy, he had just come off of Saturday Night Live, and he was definitely making a name out of himself, not just in the comedic world, but seeing how he can do some action when it counts. Like I said, Eddie Murphy made this movie because of the blend of action and comedy, which is a blueprint for a lot of buddy cop movies or just single cop movies. Eddie Murphy also works in this movie because of who they pair him with, which is Judge Reinfeld and John Ashton, who both play. Eddie Murphy works in this movie because of who they also partner him up with, which is Judge Reinfeld and John Ashton, who play Rosewood and Taggart in the film. And Taggart, he's the more straight one, while Reinfeld, he's the more laid back and open one. But seeing how the three of them, their partnerships developed, and just watching them work together, that by the end of the movie, you're like, y'all a good team. And that's because of Eddie Murphy. He's trying to get them out of the show because Beverly Hills, they're a little bit more lax when it comes to the police force, but yeah. I did not know that Paul Reiser, aka Burke from Aliens, is in this film, and him and Eddie Murphy is definitely a partnership I did not know I wanted to see, but it worked. But my favorite character within all these movies is definitely Gil Hill, who plays the captain of the police force that Axel Foley is a part of, and he's definitely the blueprint for every angry captain within any police force within any movie. But it worked because Gil Hill, he actually worked in the police force in his actual life, and he was really only in three movies, just this and the two sequels that followed afterwards. He didn't really want to pursue acting, but he volunteered to be in these movies, and yeah, hey, that's just authenticity right there. And rest in peace to him as well. Now, of course, I'm a fan of movies from the 80s, and the 80s aspect definitely worked for this movie, and particularly the music as well. But overall, like I said, I'm not over the moon with this movie, but I do understand why people love this movie, and it's definitely the best within the franchise. And that's why I give the first Beverly Hills Cop the hands up emoji. Now, the second film, while I still enjoyed it, but I also see how it's a step down from the first film because it was more of an emphasis on action than comedy. It's not as funny as the first film, but Eddie Murphy, he still works with this film and he's partnered up with all the same people within this film. This movie was directed by the late Tony Scott, who has made a bunch of films that I quite admire and enjoy, and some of them are best friends of all time, except Top Gun, which was his first film. Well, if you see my review of that in Top Gun Maverick, you know how I feel about that movie. But he did make Top Gun, but he made a bunch of Denzel Washington flicks like Deja Vu, Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, Unstoppable. He also made Days of Thunder, Revenge, Last Boy Scout, True Romance, Enemy of the State, Domino. But of all the directors of these Beverly Hills Cop movies, he's probably my favorite because I just like his style, and I think his style worked with this movie. I just wish the movie was just a little bit more funnier. Bridget Nielsen, who's in this movie, which this is probably the third movie I've ever seen her in because the other two movies I've seen her in was just Rocky 4 and Creed 2. I think I've seen her in other movies I can't recall at the moment, but this is another new thing that I know that she does now. Overall, I enjoyed Beverly Hills Cop 2. Not as good as the first, but still funny enough to watch. It's a nice little companion piece to that first film. And that's why I also give Beverly Hills Cop the thumbs up emoji as well. Now, Beverly Hills Cop 3, I've heard from a lot of people and a lot of movie YouTubers that Beverly Hills Cop 3 is the worst within the franchise, so I was kind of dreading it, and after watching it, I can definitely see why. We spend the majority of the movie in an amusement park, which doesn't work. Obvious green screen, obvious stunt doubles. I can see Eddie Murphy was trying to make the movie more funnier than the second film. He's trying to go back to the roots of the first movie, but it just doesn't work. I forgot who the director was of this movie, but yeah, whatever he was trying to do with this just did not work. This movie is a huge step down from the first two films. It was definitely a sign that this franchise's best days was behind them, but now we're getting a new movie, so hopefully they can recapture the magic. But it's a long awaited sequel that's made in 2024, so I don't know how much water that holds. But you can't do any worse than Beverly Hills Cop 3, though. And that's why I give Beverly Hills Cop 3 the shoulder shrug emoji. Now, after watching that trilogy for the first time, I am a little bit curious to see how Beverly Hills Cop Axel Foley turns out because Eddie Murphy returns, Taggart and Rosewood return. I want to see if that magic is still there between the three actors, and then apparently he has a daughter. I'm just curious to see what a Beverly Hills Cop movie looks like in 2024.